together and create tomorrow that is changing. Creating a sustainable tomorrow of Jeju. Global partner, JDC.
Coming up on Arirang News, the South Korean first couple receives a royal welcome from Dutch King Willem-Alexander and Queen Maxima, with President Yoon's trip focused on bolstering the semiconductor alliance. We'll be visiting the headquarters of ASML. South Korea's defense ministry aims to spend more than $260 billion over the next 5 years to reinforce the military's defense capabilities, particularly on the three-axis deterrence system against North Korea's escalating military threats. Now, all members of K-pop supergroup BTS are serving their country, with RM, V, Jimin, and Jungkook beginning their mandatory military service this week, following Jin, J-Hope, and Suga, who are already serving. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. President Yoon Suk-yeol began the first official day of his state visit to the Netherlands on Tuesday with a welcoming ceremony held by King Willem-Alexander and Queen Maxima in Dam Square, followed by a formal introduction, a performance of national anthems, and an inspection of an honor guard. Yoon headed into the royal palace where he was scheduled to attend a reception and lunch hosted by the king. Then, the South Korean leader and Dutch king will visit the Netherlands chip equipment giant ASML's headquarters in the afternoon before an official state dinner is held in the evening. Staying in Amsterdam, on Monday evening, President Yoon Suk-yeol took part in a banquet with the Korean community. There, he highlighted the importance of semiconductor cooperation between Seoul and Amsterdam. Woo Soo-young reports.
President Yoon Suk-yeol pledged to turn the Korean-Dutch chip cooperation into a semiconductor alliance through his state visit this week, as South Korea looks to secure its supply chain of chip-making parts and equipment. Speaking at a banquet for around 100 Korean expats in Amsterdam after his arrival, he stressed that the focus of his visit is primarily about chips. Semiconductors made up 18.9% of the trade-dependent country's exports as of last year.
이번 방문을 계기로 한국과 네덜란드의 반도체 협력은 이제 반도체 동맹으로 그 관계가 격상되게 될 것입니다. 반도체는 우리의 산업뿐만 아니라 안보에도 중요한 그런 분야입니다.
Yoon and King Willem-Alexander will visit the headquarters of ASML, the world's largest producer of lithographers, core equipment used for making semiconductors. The heads of major chip producers, Samsung and SK Hynix, Lee Jae-yong and Choi Tae-won, will also join the visit. The South Korean president will become the first world leader to have access to the clean room facility, where he is likely to get a glimpse of extreme ultraviolet lithography machines capable of producing 2-nanometer chips, roughly 10 to 15 times faster than 3-nanometer chips, currently the most advanced on the market. This, according to senior officials, indicates positive signals for South Korea in procuring the latest equipment to further boost its chip-making capacity.
The performance of microchips determines the fate of not only AI, quantum and biotechnology, but also advanced weaponry. Although Korea is a global chip-making powerhouse, it falls short in terms of equipment and materials. In order to maintain and develop our reputation as a chip manufacturing powerhouse, it is crucial to forge strategic alliances with countries leading in materials and equipment, such as the Netherlands, the United States, and Japan.
The leader is expected to agree on a variety of deals, including on semiconductor cooperation and a dedicated dialogue channel, following his bilateral talks with Prime Minister Mark Rutte on Wednesday at The Hague.
물론 한국과 네덜란드는 국방 안보와 같은 이런 전략적 분야부터 시작해서 경제, 문화 교류까지 또 첨단 과학기술 분야의 교류까지 다양한 분야의 그 지평이 확대되고 있고 이번 방문을 통해서 많은 또 이런 협정과 MOU들이 체결되면서 한내 관계가 더욱 깊어질 것입니다.
Yoon's official engagements began on Tuesday, marking the first state visit for a South Korean leader to the country in 62 years of bilateral ties, which were upgraded to a strategic partnership last year.
The two-side strategic partnership will set out to bolster their security cooperation rooted in their solidarity of shared values and economic security cooperation based on their high-tech alliance. 오수영, Arirang News, Amsterdam.
Shifting gears, amid growing concerns following North Korea's recent launch of a military spy satellite, South Korea is seeking to spend more than $260 billion on defense over the next 5 years, with a focus on bolstering its three-axis deterrence system. Our Peunji explains more.
The Ministry of National Defense is looking to spend nearly 350 trillion Korean won, or $266 billion over the next 5 years, to bolster the military's defense capabilities. It aims to increase the country's annual defense budget by 7% each year, so that the money available yearly, which stood at about $43 billion this year, could reach $60 billion by 2028. The spending plan is subject to National Assembly approval. The country aims to especially focus on strengthening the military's three-axis deterrence system against North Korea's military threats. Announcing the midterm defense blueprint for the 2024 to 2028 period, the ministry said it'll secure defense capabilities to swiftly detect signs of North Korean provocations through spy satellites and reconnaissance aircraft, and quickly analyze captured images. It plans to operate a total of 5 military reconnaissance satellites by 2025 and also use medium-altitude unmanned aerial vehicles to boost surveillance on key targets. By 2028, the ministry also aims to complete the deployment of tactical surface-to-surface missiles designed to destroy hostile tunnel targets, and deploy more stealth fighters and 3,000-ton submarines equipped with submarine-launched ballistic missiles. As part of efforts to better defend the capital area and the country's key facilities, it plans to use various missile systems, including the Cheongung-2 surface-to-air missile and a long-range surface-to-air missile. It also plans to develop improved versions of medium-range and long-range missiles over the next 5 years to create a multi-layered missile defense system. Peunji, Arirang News.
South Korea and the United States will hold the second meeting of the bilateral Nuclear Consultative Group this week to strengthen the allies' nuclear response to North Korea's growing provocations. The presidential office said Tuesday that the meeting will take place on Friday in Washington, D.C., led by their national security councils with participants including officials from defense, foreign affairs, military, and intelligence sectors. The NCG was formed earlier this year as part of President Yoon Suk-yeol and President Joe Biden's Washington declaration amid North Korea's escalating nuclear and missile threats to regional security. The upcoming meeting will evaluate progress made on initial action plans set out at the first meeting in July and specify future directives. In the Middle East, Israel says the war in Gaza will end with the surrender of Palestinian militant group Hamas, as the Israeli forces are close to dismantling the final 2 Hamas strongholds in northern Gaza. Meanwhile, Hamas-run Gaza's health ministry says over 18,000 Palestinians have now been killed. Our Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said Monday that Israeli troops are encircling Hamas's last 2 strongholds in northern Gaza, adding that Hamas battalions in the Jabalia and Shijaya areas are on the verge of dismantling. The defense minister added that the Hamas fighters that have already surrendered said they are short of weapons and food. He went on to say that Israeli forces are near a breaking point in the northern Gaza Strip, calling upon remaining Hamas fighters to surrender, as he promised to spare their lives if they do so. The comments come as the Israel Defense Forces and the Israeli Security Agency announced last week that more than 500 Hamas and Islamic Jihad fighters had been captured over the past month. Gaza's health ministry reported that over 18,000 Palestinians have now been killed since the start of the armed conflict. The ministry spokesperson also reported that the bodies of 208 dead Palestinians were transferred to hospitals in the Gaza Strip during the past 24 hours, with over 400 others injured during that time. He called on medical teams around the world to go to the Gaza Strip to help with life-saving operations for the wounded Gazans, stressing that hundreds of wounded people are seeking treatment. Meanwhile, according to a report by the Washington Post on Monday, Israel used U.S.-supplied white phosphorus munitions in an October attack in southern Lebanon that injured at least 9 civilians. According to the report, a journalist working for the Post found remnants of 3 155mm artillery rounds fired into Deira, near the border of Israel. The attacks incinerated at least 4 homes. The rounds were said to have been saturated with white phosphorus that burns at high temperatures. Despite accusations of war crimes by human rights groups, the Israel Defense Forces said that white phosphorus shells launched by Israel are used to create smoke screens, not for targeting or causing fires, adding that it complies and goes beyond the requirements of international law. 이승재, Arirang News.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is in the U.S. to urge lawmakers to greenlight more military support for his country. This comes as a proposed military aid package remains stalled in Congress. Our Park Geon-woo has the details.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has arrived in Washington, D.C. on Monday in an attempt to rescue a U.S. defense support package worth $60 billion to Kyiv. The package is currently stalled in U.S. Congress as it's opposed by Republicans who are arguing that more money should be used for domestic security at the U.S.-Mexico border. Zelenskyy's appeal is seemingly even more crucial as Congress begins its holiday recess at the end of this week. According to a statement by the White House the day before, Zelenskyy's visit was meant to underscore the United States' unshakable commitment to supporting the people of Ukraine as they defend themselves against Russia's brutal invasion. The arrival of the Ukrainian president makes it his 3rd visit to the U.S. since the war began in February 2022. During Zelenskyy's speech at the National Defense University in Washington on Monday, he asked for continued support while saying Ukraine has not given up.
Ukrainians haven't given up and won't give up. We know what to do, and you can count on Ukraine, and we hope just as much to be able to count on you.
He added, when the support of freedom fighters goes down, that is when Russia's dreams come true. Following his remark, U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin promised unshakable support for Kyiv.
And the United States is proud to stand with you. And make no mistake, America's commitment to supporting Ukraine against Russian aggression is unshakable.
Meanwhile, President Zelenskyy is also set to meet with U.S. President Joe Biden on Tuesday. They are expected to discuss the U.S.'s ongoing commitment to Ukraine as well as its country's need for more funds. Park Geon-woo, Arirang News.
The UN's COP28 climate summit is yet to reach an agreement over the summit statement. It's because a large group of countries criticized the draft agreement's omission of a commitment to phase out fossil fuels. Our Yoon reports.
The COP28 climate summit negotiations drag on as countries have not come to an agreement on the summit statement. After many countries criticized the draft version as too weak because it omitted a phase-out of fossil fuels, a new draft document was expected early on Tuesday, ahead of the scheduled close of the conference at 11 a.m. local time. According to Reuters, a 100-strong group of countries, including the United States, EU, and Australia, demanded a firm commitment and criticized the draft as too weak. Deals at UN climate summits must be passed by consensus by the nearly 200 countries present. On Monday, a draft of the COP28 agreement was published by the summit president, the United Arab Emirates. It proposed various options and called for reducing the production and consumption of fossil fuels, but the draft did not use the words phase out as seen in previous agreements. An earlier draft on Friday had included phase out, something climate campaigners, low-lying island states, and the European Union have been advocating for. But the latest draft called for reducing the consumption and production of fossil fuels in a just, orderly, and equitable manner, so as to achieve net zero by before or around 2050 in keeping with the science. It also provides 8 options that countries could use to cut emissions, including tripling renewable energy capacity by 2030 and scaling up technologies to capture CO2 emissions. According to Reuters, sources familiar with the discussions said the United Arab Emirates had come under pressure from Saudi Arabia to drop any mention of fossil fuels from the text. Saudi Arabia is the de facto leader of the OPEC oil producers group, of which the UAE is a member. Greenhouse gas emissions from burning fossil fuels are the main cause of climate change, and despite the rapid growth of renewable energy use, around 80% of the world's energy is produced using fossil fuels. Yoon, Arirang News.
With just 120 days left until South Korea's 22nd general election on April 10th next year, the preliminary registration of prospective candidates began this morning. As the election race starts off, our political correspondent Lee Si-hoo shares what's coming up between now and the election day. Listen in.
The preliminary registration of prospective candidates of the 22nd general election began on Tuesday. Once registered, the candidates can open an election campaign office, distribute promotional posters and name cards, and fundraise up to 150 million Korean won, or a little over $110,000. Since it began in 2004, the early registration intends to give new politicians ample time to promote themselves ahead of the official registration in March. By February 10th, or 60 days before voting, overseas voters must complete their voter registration. For 2 days beginning March 21st, the candidates will officially register. Overseas voting will begin on March 27th. The next day, the official campaigns will begin, and this is when you will see full-blown campaigns and hear promotional songs and cheering on the streets. Early voting in Korea will begin on April 5th. Then on the 10th, the official voting will take place all day from 6 in the morning to 6 in the evening. The ballot count will begin right after to decide the winners. The Election Act requires the National Assembly to finalize electoral districts a year before the election, but it's already over half a year past the deadline. The National Election Commission's Committee on Finalizing the Districts offered a proposal last week. But the main opposition Democratic Party says that the proposal favors the ruling People Power Party, while the PPP says it simply reflects changes in population. The delay in the process is causing candidates to register to run without knowing exactly which district they might be trying to represent. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
The government is extending a fuel tax cut for 2 more months until February next year. The tax cuts were initially put in place to help curb inflationary pressure amid rising oil prices, and the most recent extension in October was set to expire at the end of this year. However, the conflict between Israel and Hamas prompted the new extension due to supply concerns. The cut for gasoline has been lowered to 25%, while diesel remains unchanged at 37%. Despite Dubai crude used as the base rate for imported oil prices dropping from $90 per barrel to $75 this month from October, Finance Ministry emphasized the need for caution before making further decisions amid the ongoing uncertainty in oil prices. Amid an aging population and a rising number of young people delaying marriage, last year around 35% of households in South Korea were people living alone. According to Statistics Korea on Tuesday, the number of single-person households in 2022 rose to over 7.5 million. Both the figure and the proportion marked a record high since relevant data was first compiled in 2015. Meanwhile, the annual income earned by single-person households rose by 11% year-on-year to around 30 million Korean won, or $23,000, narrowing the gap with the overall average from the year before. However, it still falls short of half of the average household income. Moving on, all 7 BTS members are now enlisted in the military as Jimin and Jungkook began their mandatory service today. fans have to wait until at least 2025 to see the whole group back together again. Our An Sung-jin takes a closer look at what their absence could mean for the K-pop industry.
Starting with Jin in December 2022, the entirety of BTS will now be serving their country. With RMMV joining the army on Monday, the final two members of BTS, Jimin and Jungkook, followed them on Tuesday afternoon. Jin will be discharged first in June 2024, but BTS fans will have to wait until at least June 2025 when the final members are discharged before they can see BTS back together again. Just like their fandom name ARMY, most of the members will be serving in the army, apart from Suga, who is serving in social services due to a shoulder cartilage injury. J-Hope, the group's main performance dancer, joined the army in April this year and will be discharged in October 2024. The four members RMV, Jimin, Jungkook, who joined this week, are all set to be discharged in June 2025. And as Suga's social service duty requires him to serve 3 more months than the regular army, he will be the last member to finish his duties a few days later. As some members will begin their solo endeavors after their discharge, hopes are high that they will gather together in 2025 and reinitiate their second chapter as a group. As the group's recently renewed contract period begins in 2025, they could release part 2 of their album, The Most Beautiful Moment in Life, which will mark its 10-year anniversary in the year of their discharge. V left a message on his social media that they have prepared much content for during their military service, suggesting the release of various content for their fans. On December 20th, BTS will release a documentary titled BTS Monuments Beyond the Star, which shows their 10-year journey since their debut. A culture critique says that their absence could be a chance for the spotlight to shine on other K-pop artists as well.
I think it's nearly impossible to completely fill in for BTS. However, as much as they worked on building their career, other K-pop artists would have worked hard as well, and this may be a chance to pay closer attention to other K-pop artists.
Though they may not appear on stage during their military service, as they have prepared much content, there's plenty to fill the void. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
The snow and rain we had nationwide for a few days will all go away tonight. We have milder than usual temperatures tomorrow. Maximum temperatures in most areas will stay in double digits. Since temperature swings are expected, please try to dress up warm both in the morning and the evening. Meanwhile, as more rain is expected on Thursday morning, the clouds will gradually increase tomorrow. The fine dust level will be good to normal for the entire country. Tomorrow, most regions will start off at single digits. Seoul will be at 1 degree Celsius, Gwangju 6 degrees. Daytime highs will be a bit higher than today. Seoul will go up to 11, Daejeon, Daegu, and Gyeongju at 14 degrees. After another spell of rain across the country on Friday, the Arctic cold wave of around minus 10 degrees is expected to rage again from the weekend. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Well, that brings an end to this newscast. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 10 p.m. with the AI headline news. Good night.